Welcome to BrandBusters with your hosts, James Schwinn and Sean Lee. Together, we bust open the latest in CPG, retail media, and life, or whatever the f*** we want. And for today's episode, we got something special cooked up for ya. Extra spicy. Take it away, Sean.
All right. We are back in live for episode 7. So excited to talk to you guys today after a brief hiatus due to some travel and me somehow getting pneumonia like an 80-year-old nursing home patient being on my deathbed.
It was a man cold. It was a man cold.
Yeah, I think I just had the sniffles. We'll see. But we are back at you. So today we're going to talk about a quick episode. It's going to be one. James and I used to work for a company called Amify, which was a startup here in Cincinnati that was recently announced to be sold to cart.com out of Houston. So we'll talk about that and reminisce on some stories about getting that off the ground and playing a small part in hopefully a good exit for them. And then we'll talk about Amazon delaying their new low inventory fees, which is a topic we talked about in our last episode. So Amazon blinked a little bit and pushed it back. We'll see if they blink again and talk about implications there. And then in the world of D2C CPG, which if you've kind of followed any of the stocks, everybody's been down quite a bit from their peaks, but there are still some really good brands that have launched over the past couple of years, and Dr. Squatch being one of them. And it was recently announced that they are shopping the brand around for a sale. At least somebody announced that to the media. So it looks like their private equity group is trying to exit for the tune of $2 billion for evaluation, which would be huge for a CPG brand, probably one of the bigger exits in recent memory. So we will talk through that and get going. So James, Amify was sold to cart.com. I think long time coming, obviously excited for all the people at Amify. Shout out to Ethan, the founder, Chris, the CEO, and everybody that we used to work with there. But what are your feelings? It's always fun and interesting when a company you played a little part of building gets acquired.
Yeah, really excited for everyone. I think, when we were there and when you recruited me there, 4.5 years ago, probably at this point when we started those conversations, I think we always knew that was kind of the end goal and trajectory. And so that's the first environment I had been in where that was kind of the mission or the goal. So really interested to kind of dive in and be part of that, work with some really brilliant people, and probably some of the most fun I've had. I think the people from the creative team to the strategy, work with likes of Brian McDonald and Nate Ellis and Ali Monet and Lindy Wilking and Christine McCambridge and you and Andy and Matt Watson. I know I'm name dropping a bunch of people right now, but it was a blast to just see that brain trust of everyone kind of come in and build something and figure it out on the fly. I mean, coming in and changing the business model from a reseller to a holistic Amazon agency with no collateral around that and trying to figure out pitches and going after brands that we were in no way, shape, or form ready for, but figured out. It was really thrilling and probably the most fun I've had in any sales environment that I can think of.
Yeah, reminiscing on it, there's a couple things, and for our listeners who maybe have never worked in a venture capital environment or private equity environment, there's really kind of 3 models. If you're not working for a big Fortune 500 company, there's 3 models. There's the venture capital model, which Amify was, which, hey, you've taken capital, the VC fund, probably has a 5 to 7 year time horizon, and they need to exit and get a return for their investors. So the mission was always, how do we grow top line as fast as possible? You're a little less concerned about profitability. So it's really sign up clients, grow, and try build this thing to the biggest exit that you can get, which is just a different mission from where I'd come from and at P&G, where, you're trying to grow the business 1% to 2% a year and make sure that you're always paying the dividend to shareholders. So just a completely different mentality. And profitability at a big company is obviously much more important than venture capital. The other model is private equity, which I had spent some time in before I joined Amify, which is similar. A private equity fund might have the same time horizon, a 4 to 7 year horizon on their fund. They need to get a return for investors, but usually they're a lot more focused on profitability. So they're buying established businesses and they're trying to grow it and optimize the bottom line and then sell it to a larger private equity firm or roll it up. So it was just it was kind of wild when I first started at Amify. I think I'll reminisce on this. I was employee one in Cincinnati. We didn't have an office. We didn't really have a team. We were a reseller. Um, you know, buying a variety of Amazon products and being one of many people reselling them, trying to shift over to this new model of being a holistic Amazon agency with some technology. I think we called it Amazon as a service. Um, I remember I was trying to recruit our first sales guy. His name was Sam Thurstone, who James had worked with previously, and I had just booked office space in an old firehouse. It was like a cool startup space. I invited Sam to get coffee, brought him in to show him the space, did an interview with him, and literally we had no furniture. It was just two folding chairs and like an empty old firehouse. I'm like, how am I ever going to sell this guy to come work with me? It was kind of a leap of faith to get him to come on board, but that's what we had started with, and I mean, pretty impressive to see over I mean, what has it been now, James? Probably 4 or 5 year period that they went from that to, you know, we started bringing on smaller clients in the Amazon space and then moving further and further upstream to kind of middle private brands and then enterprise level brands. So really going from nothing and just kind of faking it until you make it until to having a roster of some pretty solid clients that pay well and in a company that was known for good service is pretty impressive. Yeah, but a lot of struggles along the way in startup land but it was a ton of fun and look very fondly on that and glad they're a part of the cart.com family and hope they can continue that legacy for their clients going forward.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that's stood out to me, historically being on the professional services side, in the sales environment, is that word gets out. So when you're doing great work, people recognize that and will recommend you and refer better work. I think that's where a lot of that success came from. Where initially, like between you and Andy's network, and I think Brian's network, there was a lot of maybe interest based on your backgrounds and who you had worked with prior. But then I think the team really delivered some phenomenal results, and I think really surprised. And the fact, I think the velocity at which we grew and were able to really mature our pitch and go to market and refine that, it's actually unique. It felt like we were never moving fast enough, but in reality and in hindsight, like we were delivering, I think, fantastic results. And I think any agency is only as good as its people, right? I think you look at people and process and technology. When you don't have process nor the technology resources initially in the startup phase, you have to really rely on the people, and they're burning the midnight hours, oil and hours, and building the processes, and then trying to lace in technology over time. And so I know, like, the PMs and the ops people, we created a lot of headaches in terms of how we're going to implement them and onboard them. The likes of like Lucy and Jess really, I think, stepped in to help mitigate that process and make sure it was a lot smoother for everyone. But yeah, I think one of the more exciting pitches that I enjoyed while we were there, and Sean, we're covering them today, is Dr. Squatch, and just a really phenomenal group. Probably one of the brighter individuals that I had interacted through the pitch process, but super collaborative as well. And that was just such a treat. I think everyone was so excited in terms of developing like custom decks and everything with them. So that's one that always stands out in my mind. And we ultimately did get to partner with them. So that was a really big victory back then.
Yeah, and I mean, the cool thing about startup world is there's a lot that goes into it, and for every startup that gets acquired and every success story, there's probably a ton of people that have touched it in kind of different iterations along the way. I think going from being a reseller to pivoting to an agency was kind of one version of the company, right? You needed to kind of use your background, use your people to just try bring on as many clients as you can before you had any really case studies or things that you could point to for success. You're just trying to figure it out. Then you start to produce some good work, some results, you get your processes better, and you move further and further upstream, which I think they did. I mean, for me being there probably close to 3 years, I think it was awesome. Like, it was during COVID. I had never led a sales team before. I was a CMO. I inherited the sales team. James joined me. Everybody was doing everything remote. We were just kind of winging it, trying to figure out how to make it all work through COVID. But I mean, bringing on whatever we did, 40 clients over a 2.5 or 3 year period was incredibly impressive from having nothing before. And then on the back end, building the plane while you're flying it by figuring out the processes of like, great, now we have these 40 clients. How are we going to go serve them? But everything kind of comes to an end. Like, I think when I left, I had kind of got to the point where, it was pretty mature. A lot of business was coming in through referrals and the work that had been done. I was kind of ready to move on. And I think the next iteration of people that were running the company were the right iteration that had, mature agency experience and could kind of build the process to take it from, hey, startup, we're figuring it all out, to now let's implement the right people and processes to become a grown up or mature agency, which I think they did a nice job of. So kind of kudos to that. And anybody in their career looking for whether you should join a startup, I think I probably learned more in those 2.5 or 3 years, not without a lot of stress and gray hairs, but it was a ton of fun just, figuring it out and kind of building to this mission of how do you set the company up to be acquired in the future.
Yeah. And one thing I just want to say, so I started, the fact that it got to where it did, you're thinking about changing business models. So I think they took on funding, right? Changed business, hired you and Andy and a few others, changed business models. Oh, then the pandemic hits. And now you're talking about navigating that. So doing all of that within a couple of months and then building an agency effectively remote and things not being just completely decimated. And the fact that there's that glue of culture to really get everyone to rally around and still figure it out and scrap it together and eventually start getting in. I think that just blows my mind. And also as a sales guy, I've traditionally been an outside sales guy forever. So always in person, doing lunches, coffees, traveling regionally, to now selling exclusively virtually. That piece was taken away for the better part of 1 to 2 years because conferences were on hold. We weren't going out to visit customers or for pitches. So that's a very unique dynamic to navigate and really kind of help them kind of go from like 0 to 1. Granted, again, the reseller business was there as a foundation, so it wasn't a true 0 to 1 situation, but with that,
pretty close. When you blow up your entire business model and shift it, I mean, that's it's as close to 0 to 1 as you can get.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, for me, it was fun. It was not dissimilar to when I launched the Ziva brand for Procter & Gamble Ventures, going from 0 to 1. I've always enjoyed kind of that early stage. Like, there's chaos around you and you just got to figure it out. Like once it gets to a little bit more of a mature state, at least early on in my career, like that's when it was like, hey, it's time to go find the next challenge for me. So glad that it did mature, that the team's done a great job since it's matured, and glad that they found a home and that cart.com acquired them. So fantastic, kind of reminiscing on that. And, anybody that's considering working in a startup environment, I think you get a ton of great experience and you really learn how to wear many hats versus a big company where you might have a more defined role. And I think kind of having that Swiss Army knife of experience can really help you problem solve and do whatever's next in your career.
Yeah.
Cool. So moving on to our next topic, James, I was going to just present this really quickly. So last time we were talking about Amazon starting these low inventory fees, which everybody has kind of been up in arms about for quite some time. I'm going to share an image here on our screen. And this is the vice president at Amazon, Dharmesh Mehta. On LinkedIn, he posted, hey, we've been communicating that these low inventory fees are coming. And just for context, for people that didn't listen to the last episode, Amazon on April 1st was supposed to roll out low inventory fees. So if you have 1 to 28 days of cover in Amazon FBA warehouses, they were going to start charging you a fee for that because they were saying that's too low. On the flip side, they also charge you a fee if you have too much inventory or aged inventory in Amazon. So they're really trying to force sellers to be their supply chain, right? Of making sure that the sweet spot for the Amazon consumer is always in the Amazon FBA warehouses. And they're in addition to that, they're trying to make you send shipments to 4 to 5 places so that you can get it more spread out across the country to help Amazon get product to the end consumer within 24 hours. So a lot of what Amazon's been doing with this strategy has been shifting a lot more to their third-party sellers, which make up over 60% of the revenue sold on the platform, to do the supply chain and planning for them. Ultimately to shift the burden to the sellers off of Amazon. So as you can imagine, there's a shit ton of tension that is being put into the system because sellers are pushing back saying, hey, this isn't really my problem. This is your problem, Amazon. And hey, now you're going to charge me these low inventory fees. I suspect what was happening is Amazon has all this warehouse capacity. And what we've been seeing in the market is people were starting to sell through things that, were slower movers or that they couldn't forecast as much appropriately to avoid these fees. So Amazon probably hit the panic button a little bit when they started seeing a ton of, inventory leave the FBA warehouses in anticipation of these fees. So Amazon blinked a little bit. I don't know how much this will last, but Dharmesh Mehta, their vice president, said for the month of April, Amazon's going to charge these low inventory fees so that sellers can get a feel for what they'll be, but they're going to credit them back at the end of the month. And they're going to push the actual start date for the fees being charged to May 1st, which I think is a win for sellers to try to understand the impact for their business. I wouldn't be shocked if Amazon delays it a little bit more, because with all the changes that they've launched, which is now I got to send shipments to multiple places instead of one, which costs me more. Now I have these low inventory fees. They're changing FBA fees a little bit. I just don't think business owners that sell on the platform are going to be able to forecast appropriately for their business. So a lot of people are going to, when there's uncertainty, you're just going to pull back, pull stuff out of Amazon until you kind of have a better idea of what's going on. So I wouldn't be shocked if Amazon blinks and gives another couple months free on this thing, or ultimately in the future, maybe they scrap it altogether and just move to a more simple fee-based model that works for everybody. But I don't know. This is pretty interesting when a VP at Amazon has to go and write a LinkedIn post about, hey, we heard you and we're pushing this back a month. That's telling that the seller community was really raising hell about this, and somebody took note at Amazon that it went up that high.
Yeah. So my take on this, there's a little thing that happens in mid-July each year called Prime Day. Have you heard of it, Sean?
I've never heard of it.
No, never heard it. So I'm curious. I do agree that, one, I agree with the move in terms of kind of delaying the implementation. What I think will be interesting to monitor is this something that they're trying to really shore up, because we know like Prime Day inventory, like for any deals that you're submitting to that has to be shored up, if I recall, like late May, early June timeframe. So I could see them trying to get this done, and they're just going to commit to the May timeframe, and it is what it is. Or maybe they push back till after Prime Day, but then we're talking about, Q4, and we know that their inventory fees go up in Q4. We know that there was like a Prime early access sale in the fall, so we know that kind of kicks off, I think, around October-ish. So there's a lot of moving parts here that I think. And the one thing I think also need to address here is, for the mature brands and businesses out there, like, this does have an impact from a channel P&L standpoint, but they have the resources, the infrastructure, the personnel to like address and kind of work around this. This is probably a bigger risk for, there's probably three types of brands or sellers I think are going to struggle. One, novice sellers who don't really know what they're doing. They're just they're selling. They don't necessarily have the brand foundation or that CPG background. Two, businesses that are very seasonal. I think that's really hard to account for, that inventory planning.
Incredibly hard.
When there's those big swings. And then the other is those with a massive catalog and maybe multiple models. So if you have a lot of resellers or vendor central and a seller central hybrid combination, I think those are going to be the ones that probably feel this the most. Otherwise, I think the ones that have good processes around their ASINs, really good assortment, and are I think realistic about that, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I think the long tail goes away because it's harder to predict. I think resellers will continue to be hit by this. The other thing, I mean, the cynic in me, like, of Amazon trying to take more and more power, is Amazon has this thing called AWD, not to be confused with AWS. It's Amazon's warehouse and distribution. So Amazon's trying to become the end-to-end 3PL for a lot of brands and businesses. So what's really kind of interesting that not a lot of people are talking about, buried in this, is Amazon will waive a lot of these inbound fees and some of these low inventory storage fees if you sign up for their Amazon warehousing and distribution solution, which basically says get rid of your 3PL, send all your inventory to us. We'll take care of managing, making sure it gets into Amazon FBA on your behalf, and we'll also fulfill your website orders. We'll send it to B2B customers, and it just gives Amazon way more power over the brands. So I think that's the ultimate play, is like, are they using these fees to make their Amazon warehouse distribution solution way more exciting, to try to get people to leave their 3PL, which makes them even stickier. So then brands are even more in bed and tied to Amazon. So that's kind of the cynic in me. They've got all this warehouse space. They're pushing this AWD solution. I wouldn't be shocked if their motivation is, let's make the fees really hard and confusing, so that when you factor in a brand has to pay its own 3PL or have their own warehouse, now they have to forecast all these fees. Hey, we've got the easy button. Just send it to Amazon's warehouse and we'll take care of all of it for you and waive a bunch of these fees. Given that Amazon is under investigation for monopolistic practices, like, this is another way to get even more power with brands. And it wouldn't shock me if that's what they're trying to do here, is make this area really confusing and then serve up a solution that looks easy and appealing, and also gives Amazon more power and consolidates their power.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. So I think moving on to Dr. Squatch. What's interesting here is Dr. Squatch recently announced that Summit Partners, which is one of their investors, is exploring a sale of the business, aiming for a valuation over $2 billion, which would be huge for a consumer goods company. I think Dollar Shave Club sold for $1 billion, which we've covered on the show before, ultimately to Unilever, and then Unilever sold it for much less a handful of years later. But Dr. Squatch, awesome men's care brand. I think one of the few that's kind of broken out that hasn't been an established brand like an Old Spice, someone like that. What's impressive to me is that they've got an EBITDA, or reported EBITDA, of around $90 million, which is no easy feat for a consumer goods brand. I mean, to go from nothing to 90 million in EBITDA is really impressive. I mean, you're starting to talk big CPG brand numbers there. And I think what's also impressive is they started as kind of a D2C Amazon brand, and then really grew into a mature brand, being in Walmart and Target. I think I saw them in end cap of a Hallmark store the other day. They really started to like saturate as much distribution as they can, which I think, is a testament to the team that they built. And I know when we worked at Amify, we worked with some really great people that came from awesome MBA and consulting backgrounds. Like, they had really built a pretty powerhouse team there early on.
No, they really did. And this goes back to their founder, Jack Haldrup, who actually founded this out of his garage. And fun fact, it was initially dubbed Sasquatch soap, and it's out of a personal need. And I think this is the type of story, especially in CPG, that everyone can kind of rally behind, right? Jack struggled with psoriasis, it's autoimmune skin disease. And so rather than, he's tried a bunch of different treatments, medications, and went to, I think, like a farmer's market. And it was like this cold pressed soap that didn't leave his skin feeling like tight and itchy afterwards. So he's like, why don't I? So take an idea or a concept that resonates with him personally, and then actually worked with his sister. So the logo that we all know, and I've actually got their pine tar with me right here. Smells amazing. Actually, they still use an iteration of his sister's design for the logo. So I think it just, you take something that's so personal, and then can build it into this like pseudo empire, and then bring the Bains and McKinseys in to really catalyze this thing that, just absolutely took off. And I think from a strategy standpoint, I think a lot of us are familiar with their ads. I think Sean is going to show us one, but they tried a number of videos initially. I think it was in 2018, where they became this like viral video sensation, like over 150 million views. And they kind of took this concept, they really owned it, called like edutainment. And I think appealing to the male consumer is more difficult. we kind of need to be entertained and not so buttoned up, a little bit rough around the edges, but also have to like have the function and the work and the need kind of all mesh. Everything has to kind of click together. You can't be too sterile and dry, but you can't just be all, fun and games either. So like, how do you kind of make those things come together? And I know they work with Raindrop Agency. So Jacques Spitzer and team over there, I think just really did a phenomenal job with actor and comedian James Schrader in kind of making this viral sensation. And so they did that video in 2018. They did a full-blown Super Bowl commercial in 2021. And also able to leverage like the advent of TikTok. So for this type of brand, like massive home run in terms of the brand identity that they built, and to kind of have this like huge social following. So just, a round of applause for these guys. And I'm sure that whether the exit happens now or whenever it ends up happening, that it's going to be one of the more successful ones in recent memory.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really good point. And when I was at Old Spice, we used to always talk about this mantra, and I think most brands should follow this, which is entertain first and then educate people about your product second. Because if you don't hook them and entertain them, like most people really don't care about, soap that much to really like dig into it and look into it. Like they really want to be entertained first to even start engaging with the category. So I think these guys did a fantastic job. Yeah, let's play the ad, because even if for people that are listening on Spotify or Apple, you can hear the ad. I think it does a great job. James and I will break it down at the end. If you're watching on YouTube, obviously you can follow along and watch with us, but let's watch, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the brand. All right, let's play this thing.
Listen up. The soap you shower with, it's you probably haven't even questioned what bar of soap you lather up with. Let's face it, most guys don't. They're still using whatever bar their mommy bought for her little man. Is that what you want? To smell like mama's little man? Ugh. But now you can upgrade your shower game with Dr. Squatch Natural Soap. I'm talking about natural, nourishing, cold-pressed, hand-cut soap for men. Men who use their hands. Men who build things. Men who open the pickle jar on the first try. Men who catch foul balls without spilling their beer. You won't just smell good either. Your skin will be healthier and more nourished. Dare I say, soft. Oh, men aren't supposed to have soft skin? Yeah? Well, men weren't supposed to cry during movies. And then they made the movie Rudy. He's so little. You want to smell like the forest? Boom, pine tar, we've got you. You want to smell like the sea? Boom, nautical sage, we've got you. You want to smell like you just got off a boat in the Caribbean? Boom, bay rum, we've got you. And with 6 more cents, we've got you covered no matter what kind of man you are. Now you're wondering, why have I been doing it wrong for so long? During the First World War, big soap started taking out all the natural ingredients to make production cheaper and faster. And they replaced all the natural stuff with chemicals. Chemicals like sodium lauryl sulfate, parabens, and dioxin. But there's good news. We make our soaps with natural ingredients from the earth. Ingredients like oils, plants, goat's milk, Greek yogurt, oatmeal, shea butter, and citrus. No. Turn your shower game up to 11. With the smooth lather of gold moss or the exfoliating woodsy bliss that is pine tar. Get ready to step out of the shower feeling alive. Still not sure? Here's a couple reviews from real customers. Joseph S. says,
"This is the perfect bar of soap. It's like it was handcrafted in the Northwest Forest by beautiful tiny elves."
Oh, tiny elves isn't enough for you? Well, here's another review from Michael A.
It makes you feel like you just stepped out of a mountain stream, and Squatch was there to hand you the towel.
Time for you to get the right tool for the job, because you're worth it, my friend. We ship it right to your door. And with a 100% satisfaction guarantee, if it's not the best bar of soap you've ever used, it's on us. Click the link for Dr. Squatch Natural Soap. Real soap for real men. Or don't, and continue to be mommy's little helper.
Love
Yeah. I mean, I think they did a fantastic job there. One of the things I found really interesting is I've spent a lot of time in the men's space. So the insight is absolutely true that most men just use whatever their wife or their mom has in the shower. And a lot of people don't even think about it. So they just use the bar soap that their mom or wife has, or the woman in their life. They don't use a specific body wash. They just wash their body with shampoo. So kind of hitting that head on, I think, was really interesting in how they launched the brand and tried to get people to think differently about that insight. Even down to like reading the real reviews and bringing in social proof. I think that the ad agency did a fantastic job just introducing it and making that video entertaining. Really, really, really spot on. And it's in the men's space. What I find really interesting is outside of the big brands like Dove for Men, Old Spice, Axe, you really don't have a lot of newer men's brands that are that big. Like most of them kind of get to a point where they're 5 to 10 million in revenue, and that's kind of it. Or I think we were looking at P&G at acquiring one, and it was like 30 million in revenue, and it had been around for 15 years. So the fact that these guys launched and they're in the hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue with 90 million in EBITDA is just a testament to really finding product market fit and then being able to reach guys and get kind of execute flawlessly on distribution.
Yeah. A couple of things with, and they've also grown beyond soap, which I know line extensions are always tough bets. You do a ton of consumer research and you feel like you understand the economics, what the natural extensions are to drive up AOV. But I think they've taken a couple swings. I think deodorants worked out pretty well for them. I know heavy into licensing as well. So whole like Star Wars lines and others to really appeal to that like male demographic and also kind of drive that. I think everyone's looking for repeat purchases and subscribe and save offerings and doing little things like that. And kind of these consumables are ways to drive that. With this commercial though, I think a couple things, there's some elements, and I know you've shared, you did some stuff with Old Spice on the commercials. The quick panning, obviously, like we're really struggling today from a society, from an attention standpoint. So introducing new variables pretty rapidly. I think kind of a punchy tone. So I think we like things that are a little bit, that kind of walk the line of being a little bit in your face. So there's that tongue-in-cheek humor, and then also that social proof. So actually having testimonials read, but again, in a comic way. You see two dudes that are shirtless are kind of coming out of the woodwork. They're kind of reading it. So there's some elements at play there that I think help pull you in, and you're constantly engaged. It's not just, you're only going to stay entertained for so long, and you only want to be educated for so long. So you have to kind of weave these elements in the right balance. I think really pull it all together. So this is a good, great example on how to do a video ad, and it's 5-6 years old.
Yeah. And I think the other point that I'll make too that I thought was interesting, this is probably about a year or 2 years ago. I was talking about a lot of the direct-to-consumer brands and how a lot raised a ton of money and would spend all their money on marketing, and they weren't profitable, and they were all growing top line unprofitably in the hopes that they would get acquired. And I cited Dr. Squatch as an example, which ended up being wrong. One of their heads of retail that got distribution at Walmart and Target reached out to me and was like, "Hey, let's have a conversation. Like, you actually got this wrong. Like, we've been growing smartly and profitably for quite some time." Which, again, I think if you look at 95 to 100% of all D2C brands, they follow the model of raise money, grow unprofitably as quickly as you can, usually spending that money on Facebook, Meta, TikTok, influencer advertising. And the fact that Squatch didn't take that approach and did think about like how could they grow profitably from an early stage, I think is the reason why they're sitting in a position where they have 90 million in EBITDA, and they're probably going to get acquired for a lot more money than many of the D2C brands that just grow top line and never have a path to profitability.
No. And I want to follow up my prior statement because I did it preemptively. I jumped off. I changed directions too quickly. So we're talking about line extensions. Not only do these guys get into deodorant, but cologne, hair care, lotion, face wash, bundles, toothpaste, beard oil, candles, shower boosters, shave. They really expanded. I don't know, Sean, I don't have any insight to like annual reports or financials on that. So we can assume that some of these lines are better than others, but the fact that they've been able to to build upon their core, and then also from that licensing standpoint, again, beyond Star Wars, you're seeing Harry Potter, Avengers, Game of Thrones, and I just found this out today, Sean, but they launched a women's line or women's brand called Jukebox. So I haven't done enough research on that one, but it's just interesting. Like, they continue, if they can remotely repeat the success that they've had with Squatch, with Jukebox, and kind of meet that, female consumer. I mean, I feel like they maybe hold out on seeing this exit and then really try to, drive growth for an even more impressive, exit in years to come.
Yeah, I mean, line extensions are a double-edged sword. I think they probably had to get out of just being in bar soap, so getting into body wash, hair care, deodorant, like those are the big categories where all the money is in men's. Once you get into some of the nichier categories like face wash, lotions, moisturizers, beard oil, like the addressable market's just so much smaller. Like, we're like, I've sat in consumer studies for men's care. Like, guys we're still all cavemen. We don't want a specific face wash. We just want to wash our face with our bar soap, right? And we move on. Like, I think people have tried to make it a market, but guys just behave differently than women. It shows up in the consumer data and the behavior. So I bet the bulk of it is, their personal care business is where all the money is. But line extensions, especially cologne, can be very, very profitable. Cologne can be 90% gross margin. So if you can sell it at a higher price point and bolt it on, like, just take the margin if you can.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, if you're in New York, hopefully the earthquake did not shake you up too much this morning. Cincinnati's where the city where pigs fly. Apparently, New York is now, experiencing earthquakes. So
pretty wild.
Yeah. Do you think wait, Sean, real quick, do you think they're listening to the Harlem Shake?
I think so.
Yeah.
Harlem was shaken today for sure.
All right, bad joke. Anyways, that's probably a good sign that we should wrap up here. So
yeah, it's a good signing off point. So thank you everybody for listening to episode 7. Hopefully James will be traveling less, and I will not come down with bad man colds anymore, and we'll keep this train rolling and get some great content out. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a great week, and we look forward to having you back for episode 8 coming up shortly.